More great guests today. We're beginning with Lee Smith. His book is Disappearing the President, Trump, Truth, Social, and the Fight for the Republic. Also, The Permanent Coup. He's a widespread author. How enemies, foreign and domestic, targeted the American president. There's so much to talk about. And, of course, Jack Posobiec will join us after Lee Smith. And Jack requires really no introduction, but I will do so when it comes to that time. Lee can be followed on X at Lee Smith DC, L-E-E Smith DC on X. And again, we're going to promote highly this book that I suggest you do get and read. In particular, we're going to talk about the link to previous administrations. So you do not want to miss this as well. I've got some comments and thoughts on Hunter Biden, back to President Trump's Venus insufficiency, and this topic in particular. Get right to it.
Our laws, as it pertains to substances, are draconian and bizarre. The psychopaths start this way. He was an alcoholic because of social media and pornography, PTSD, love addiction, fentanyl and heroin. Ridiculous. I'm a doctor, for Christ's sake. Where the hell do you think I learned that? I'm just saying, you go to treatment before you kill people. I am a clinician. I observe things about these chemicals. Let's just deal with what's real. We used to get these calls on Loveline all the time. Educate adolescents and to prevent and to treat. If you have trouble you can't stop and you want to help stop it, I can help. I got a lot to say. I got a lot more to say.
I've spent most of my career dealing with illnesses that shorten life, and now we have ways to extend it and extend wellness. I've been working with the team over at V-Shred to develop a product that has everything I want in a longevity supplement. NR Boost has nicotinamide riboside. You know, metal can rust. Well, your body behaves in a similar way. It's mediated through something called NAD. NAD falls as we age, so we're less able to fight off that oxidative process. We oxidize much like that metal. And NAD fights it, but nicotinamide riboside elevates NAD so we can push back on those oxidative stressors, improving health, improving longevity. I added to that PQQ, a supplement that enhances mitochondrial growth, particularly in skeletal muscles, slowing, hopefully, the onset of sarcopenia. You also have to exercise. Sarcopenia is the loss of muscle mass as we age, and it is a major contributor to the aging process. The other product is Senosync, has fisetin, one of the key molecules to fight off zombie cells. As your body ages, becoming more senescent, the cells break down themselves. The cells are what are senescent and a source of inflammation. You can clear them out with fisetin, and we've added resveratrol to that, which is a well-known anti-aging antioxidant again, much like NR. And it seems also to enhance the function of natural killer cells. By the way, there's some suggestion that these vital cells are knocked down by COVID and COVID vaccines, and could be a factor in the increases in cancers we are seeing. I put these two elements in each product. I don't like supplements that have a ton of ingredients. To me, it suggests that none of it's working. When I prescribe a medication, I prescribe that medicine because I expect that to work. That is exactly what I've done with these products. And I want you to go to drdrew.com/vshredmd for 10% off. Again, that is drdrew.com/vshredmd. All right, I want to get right to Lee Smith. Lee, welcome, and thank you for the books. I'm assuming the plot against the president book is Disappearing the President, correct?
That's right. Yeah, I understand your confusion. I've written several books about what's been going on since late 2015, in fact. But that's the most recent book, Disappearing the President. And that really explains in quite a bit of detail Trump's successor, Barack Obama, his role in the plot against Donald Trump.
And there are two areas of confusion for me, and maybe it's unfair to even call them areas of confusion. One is why the press isn't eating up your book and trying to help either help clarify their reporting, or at least ask you to clarify your thinking on this. I just don't see them going after this story quite the same way, number one. And then number two is sort of a corollary to that is there have been big investigations, the Mueller report and all that. How did they miss these things? How did that happen?
Well, the first question I've been talking about for quite a while. A lot of people have the misunderstanding that places like the Washington Post and the New York Times, which won a joint Pulitzer in 2018 for their reporting on Russiagate, that they missed the story. They didn't understand what was happening. They choked. That's not what happened at all. In fact, the press, especially those two publications, were involved in what was an intelligence operation against Donald Trump. You had officials from the Department of Justice. This was during the first Trump term. Officials from the Department of Justice, FBI, other intelligence services, and they were leaking classified intelligence to the press all the time. So these once great media organizations were in fact serving as a platform for this operation targeting Donald Trump and Donald Trump aides like General Michael Flynn, who was Trump's first national security advisor. And then it sort of, went down the list, everyone from, like Roger Stone, just a number of different people were targeting, but the press was
George
was collaborating with that operation. They were a major part of it, the crucial part of it, in fact.
And so, what's that, Susan?
Of course.
Yeah. And so, but you would think, again, this is what's kind of confusing to me, having been in and around those organizations for a long time, they would look at your book and go, we have been perhaps, at least, if not unwitting dupes, active participants in a terrible scam. Why aren't we examining ourselves or getting ahead of it before we are sort of lumped in with the rest of the scammers?
Right. Well, that's a really big question, a very important question. I'm glad you asked it. I hope I can answer it. I hope I can answer it well enough. The nature of the media changed at a certain point. Actually, it started with the advent of the internet, and that had to do with their financial model. Once the financial model of the media changed, so did the ethics of the media as well. As I'm sure you know, during the 2000s, the number of newspapers and stuff that closed down, the number of media organizations that just plain went out of business. So you lost all sorts of levels of expertise. You lost all sorts of levels of ethics as well. So this is what happened. There was a fundamental change in the media, and Russiagate, starting in 2016, again, I refer to Russiagate as this operation against Donald Trump, that really brought it to the fore. So a lot of other stuff that we've seen, which I know that you talk about here, whether it was COVID, whether it was whether it was January 6th, all sorts of different things. We have to understand that this is the lens through which it's being refracted. Right? It's a very different kind of media than the media that we had 20, 30 years ago. So at this point, the idea that they would turn around on a heel and go wait a minute, what have we been doing? We ruined the whole model of the media. Now we're in big trouble. That's not going to happen. Remember, at the start of the second Trump term, Jeff Bezos, the owner of the Washington Post, made some comments that were that gave some optimism to people who wanted a return to the normal media. He wanted to cover certain things. He didn't want to be too politicized. But of course, we have to look at these newsrooms and understand what the ethics are in the newsroom. And also, we have to understand the Washington Post did extremely well during the first Trump term because it attacked Donald Trump, because it was not reporting fairly, because Donald Trump was the scapegoat for everything. So the Washington Post is looking at two different things. Well, sure, maybe ethics are important, maybe it's not, but the financial model works a lot better when we're just full throttle going after Donald Trump. So the idea that they're going to turn around on that now and say, no, that was a bad idea, and maybe actually the person who's the responsible for a lot of bad things that happened here, maybe it's Barack Obama. And all of the people who were leaking to us, all of the Obama officials who were feeding us information starting in 2016 and actually all throughout Trump's first term. So unfortunately, I think it's highly unlikely that will happen. So I'm not surprised that they're not citing my book. In fact, when my book has been when my other books have been reported on in the New York Times or the Washington Post, it's hardly been favorable. And, it doesn't surprise me because they are one of the main targets of my criticism.
They have to throw in a descriptor like disgraced. That's their favorite word, or proven untrue, or all this stuff.
Debunked, without evidence, whatever. That's it's fine.
Without evidence, without discussing why they're saying that, they just put it in there.
Right.
But to me, I'll have you answer the second question in just a second, though.
Sure.
But as it pertains to why they don't turn around a little bit, to me, for personally, my bottom with this behavior by the press was Chris Cuomo in the morning going, "A day that has to be remembered in history. A Russian operative sits in the Oval Office this morning." And I thought, I remember hearing that and going, what the heck? What is going on here? And he is having real difficulty. He's trying to kind of soften his stuff, but he is not taken that on yet, where he announced that this is it. This is a day of infamy. And I'm here to share it with you. And I thought until he comes around on that and apologizes, and explains how duped and how much of a mass formation they're all in. These are true believers. Right. They actually were, the intelligence operation was perfect. I think they believed what they were reporting.
Well, the CNN guys did some very bad stuff. The CNN guys were the first, that was the first media organization that put through a leak of the dossier. So they really, in a sense, they ushered in all this nonsense. So I'm not surprised Chris Cuomo didn't turn on his colleagues and turn on management and say, "What are we doing here? This is insane." But you're right. I hope that maybe now in his new role, in his newfound, what we call it, realism or skepticism, that he might question what he was doing back then, and even shed some light on what was going on.
Openness.
Say, the things that were going on in that newsroom were nuts, and I want to talk about it now.
Yeah, okay. That would be nice. I completely agree with you. Yeah. Now, the second part is, why wasn't this uncovered by some of the so-called investigations that had come before?
Yeah. Well, my first book on all of this is called Plot Against the President, and it's a story about how it's a congressional investigation led by the then chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Devin Nunes, and his lead investigator was Kash Patel, who's now the FBI director. So a lot of the information, well, for instance, the documents that DNI Tulsi Gabbard declassified last week, I heard from some people on that committee, and they were very upset. They said, "Look, this stuff, they should have given it to us." But the fact is they buried all sorts of stuff. They, meaning the bad guys. The same thing happened with different executive branch officials at the end of Trump's first term. The acting director of national intelligence was Rick Grinnell, and Kash Patel was working with him at the time. They declassified a lot of very, very important information, as did John Ratcliffe, who's now the CIA director, but at the end of Trump's first term, he was his director of national intelligence. So they all declassified a lot of very, very important stuff. They didn't get this because so much of this stuff was buried so deeply. So that's why, and kudos go to the DNI now, Tulsi Gabbard, for finding it, because some of this stuff is not going to be easy to find. And I can only imagine that there's a lot of stuff that's still deeply buried away. And, we have to give it to DNI Gabbard and her staff for finding it. And I'm sure that the FBI and the DOJ and the CIA are all looking for lots of stuff. And it's not going to be easy to dig it all up.
And I'm imagining it's not going to be pretty. So what is your prediction on how this is going to unfold? If you had a crystal ball, what's going to come up and where is it going to go?
Well, a lot of people are worried because, they've heard this before. Oh yeah, we're going to get justice finally, and people who did bad things will be held accountable. And look, there's so many people who suffered from Russiagate. I mean, starting with the president himself, his family, these people who were really hurt by it. And the number of Americans, Michael Flynn, Michael Caputo, Roger Stone, a woman named Svetlana Lokhova, a British grad student. All of these people were ensnared by this horrible network of people. So we've been waiting for justice for a long time. And I understand why people are a little, I wouldn't say skeptical, but maybe a little, they resent anything that seems too Pollyanna-ish. Nonetheless, I have to say there's a lot of reason for optimism because, first of all, there are people in the right places like Kash Patel at the head of the FBI. The other thing is we're seeing reports from credible journalists like John Solomon, who's talking about an actual investigation that's underway at DOJ and FBI. And I do believe that to be the case. And again, the people we want looking at this are in the right place. People like Kash Patel. I think John Radcliffe is doing an excellent job too. Tulsi Gabbard just showed she's capable of doing, a terrific job. So when Donald Trump talked today in the White House about Barack Obama, it's important to remember the first person who really pointed out Barack Obama's role, and that was Donald Trump in a March 4th, 2017 tweet when he said, "I just found out that Barack Obama had my phones tapped at Trump Tower." Now, the president didn't have all the details right, but in essence, he was absolutely correct. It was Barack Obama who was at the top of this. Now, does that mean that Barack Obama is going to be charged? I don't know. I just don't know, and I would tend to doubt it. But senior officials working under Barack Obama, yeah, I believe that probably what the FBI and DOJ are looking at, they're looking at stuff having to do with Obama's CIA director, John Brennan, his FBI director, James Comey, maybe his DNI, James Clapper, and others. So again, I'm optimistic that the people who are running the show know what to look for, and they're going to keep digging stuff up too. And they'll push because that's why Donald Trump was elected, right? To end weaponization of the federal government. And people elected Trump because they were optimistic, because they believed he could do it, and they still believe he can do it. So again, I'm very optimistic, and I've been following this. I've been reporting it for 8 years. And so I've seen an awful lot, and there's been a lot of ups and downs. And the only thing that the biggest takeaway I can say is something that Devin Nunes told me, again, when I was doing that book, Plot Against the President, and it was this. It's like football. It's like 3 yards and a cloud of dust. And it's very hard to get there's no Hail Marys. It's just a lot of hard work. And I'm quite certain that the people who are in those jobs are doing that hard work.
It feels like I have two sort of remaining questions. Well, one was how you got dragged into all this, and if you would mind also describing for my listeners your background so we can understand, how you're suited for this project and how you got dragged into it. Why don't you answer that first? Go ahead and answer that question.
Well, I'm a journalist. I've been working in the press for 40 years. So I mean, that's my job. But what really prepared me to look at the Russiagate thing, the use of intelligence, the use of the media, was I reported from the Middle East, and I wrote a book on the Middle East as well. And what I saw unfold here was exactly like what we see in the Middle East media and with Middle East intelligence services all the time. They call the Ministry of Information that's who runs the media, and then there's the Ministry of the Interior, and that's who runs the intelligence services. And what Russiagate is, it was the intersection of where the media and the intelligence services were, which is, again, is what we see in the Arab states the whole time, and we saw this unfolding in our government. I saw it starting even before 2016, but certainly with the advent of this attack on Donald Trump as a Russian agent. I'm like, okay, something is going on here that's not normal. And so that's what really got my attention. And that's what let me see certain things that were happening, that even a lot of other, some other reporters, conservative reporters or right-wing journalists, however we want to put it, didn't really see as clearly at the time as I did.
Did it shock you, or does it shock you, what happened to your profession, journalism, the media, and our government?
It's very, I think it's very sad. I think a lot of people are deeply saddened by it. But, one of the good things is what happened. I mean, Dr. Drew, you have this show here. So people need information. People need insight. And there are other people who have provided it, who have stepped up to fill different gaps. I mean, I still have to read the Washington Times, the New York Post to find out what these different campaigns look like, and what, I don't see it so much as the other side. I just see it the bad actors are doing, and how they're targeting, whether it's Trump aides, Trump supporters, whether they're doing bad things across the world. So, but again, insofar as Americans need important information and insight to make decisions about their lives, about their families' lives, their communities, other people have filled that, like you and so many other podcasts, so many other media organizations. So we lost a lot of stuff. I miss the old time New York Times, even though it was always historically pretty far to the left, but I miss it. Same with the Washington Post. Same with a lot of the television networks. But again, it's a new age, so I'm happy to see other people taking their places.
I so agree with you about the New York Times. I never minded. I never was bothered by their left-leaning point of view, because it was open, honest. The full story was laid out. The thinking was laid out. I'd learned something. And now I look at it and I go, I have no idea what's truth, what's not, what's accurate. I have no idea. It could all be fabricated. I don't know. Joe Rogan in his stand-up with Netflix said, I don't know, maybe the Earth is flat. Maybe we didn't go to the moon. I don't know. I'm open to everything all of a sudden now, which I guess is good news, bad news. The good news is, we're questioning everything. Bad news is we doubt everything.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I mean, this is. I think that the way I put this 8-year campaign against Donald Trump in context is, it's part of a longer and larger demoralization campaign to get people really depressed about their country, to get people really depressed about reality, not know what to trust, not know what to believe. And I mean, it's good that people are working to build trust. But again, I find that very distressing, that there are people, powerful people, whether it's government, whether it's media, whether it's culture, but to make people to basically open up the abyss and let Americans stare into the abyss and get terrified, not know what to believe about their communities, their families, themselves. So that I find very upsetting. But again, what's taken its place is that different families, different communities have moved closer together, and they support each other. So again, there's a lot of loss, there's a lot of gain as well.
But ultimately, it's about seeing this through to some sort of better place for the country. How do we get there? I mean, these are as you said, these 3-yard rushing gains that we're making on the football field. I mean, there's people with bizarre points of view sitting in judicial positions. Yeah. There's lawyers who seem hell-bent on using their profession to hurt people. What do we do with all that? Is it just take time to wash out?
No, it's terrible. This is one of the things that Russiagate exposed. People thought, oh, well, it's these crazy congressmen, now Senator Adam Schiff, or it's these lunatics who are running the intelligence services. Whether it was Comey or Brennan, but then they started finding out it was also the judiciary. And now we see how many judges are blocking Donald Trump, are trying to block Donald Trump. And it can be dispiriting. But one of the other things that I learned reporting Russiagate was, that we talk about so often, we talk about what it means to defend our rights, what it means to prize and preserve our liberty, our freedoms. And the line about we're only one generation away from losing it, or even less. So what it means is that we're fighting for this stuff all the time. It's part of it wasn't just the founding fathers. It wasn't just the greatest generation. It's every generation of Americans has to fight for it. And I'm very happy that we're passing this on to our children as well. Say, hey, it's not easy. That's not part of the bargain. You really want freedom and liberty, you have to be out there all the time, fighting for it. And challenging lies.
Tom Sizemore once told me a story where he visited he was like a corporal in the Army, and because he was getting ready for Black Hawk Down, and he said the guy was constantly like, hey, you can come in, but I'm busy defending freedom for this country. And we all laughed about it, like, he thinks this guy's in this constant battle like a Japanese soldier on an island, still fighting a war from long ago. And we literally laughed about it. That was only 10 years ago. And now it has become all of our animating property, which is to defend the ability to maintain our speech, just to be able to say what we want to say. It's unbelievable to me that we live in the country where that's true. But what you're saying is true, that it has to be fought for all the time. And we blinked and we assumed it was a fait accompli, that these were all just axioms and values that the government held and we all held, and we could march forward into a beautiful future. No. We have to always fight for these basic principles upon which this country was founded. I'll give you final thoughts, and then I got to kind of wrap this up.
I would say I would have loved to have talked more about Tom Sizemore. That's fascinating that you brought that up. No, I would just echo what we've been talking about. Look, it's actually, you asked me how I got dragged into this, reporting about this. I mean, it's been the highlight of my career. People have said, well, have you lost friends, family? People think you're crazy. Yeah, a little bit. But I mean, the people that I've gotten to meet, the things that I've gotten to do, I mean, it's been a huge honor. And the biggest reason is just for this, to remind everyone, to help all of us think about this. Like, yeah, you can lose this very quickly. And so insofar as everyone is, not that we have to think about it 24 hours a day, but to be mindful, to be watchful, that even inside our great country, there are bad people doing bad things. So it's been a huge honor. And it's been a great treat being on your show, Dr. Drew. I really appreciate it.
Well, the pleasure's been our Lee. We'll get you back soon sometimes. I just want to put one little coda on what you said, which is something that I'm quoting Mark Jankizi all the time now. This guy's a physicist and a cognitive psychologist, and he always reminds us that social evil, social ills are always carried out in the name of good. And sometimes the good, like they have some monumental understanding of what's good and what's not good. That is how harm is done in societies. Thank you, Lee. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Doctor.
You got it. All right. We've got the one and only Jack Posobiec coming to join us. Still lots more to talk about. That was just a appetizer. I'll have to bring Lee back to get more deeper into some of these topics because there's just so much to unearth these days. Let me look quickly at what you guys are talking about in the rants, and I see you all here. All right, let's take a little break and back with, and if Jack is not here when I get back, I'll give you some thoughts on some things I'm thinking about. Be right back. The Wellness Company knows that taking charge of your family's healthcare is a top priority, and that's why they're constantly innovating to deliver the products and services to help you be rationally ready. Be sure to have the medical kit for kids on hand, whether you're a parent or grandparent. It treats 20 childhood conditions, including nausea and vomiting, allergies, asthma, inflammatory illnesses, even bioterror, God forbid. Listen, croup, ear infections, lice, it's all available in the pediatric emergency kit. You can also order the kids kit with an EpiPen should your child be at risk of anaphylaxis. And those EpiPens are carefully sourced and well priced relative to other EpiPens in the market. All 7 kits, each customized for a different purpose, come with a telemedicine consultation and a guidebook. Skip the scramble to an urgent care waiting room full of sick people and expense, or a pharmacy where there's no guarantee they'll have what you need. Go to drdrew.com/TWC for 10% off any medical emergency kit, or the supplements for that matter. That again is drdrew.com/TWC. I'm excited to bring you a new product, a new supplement, Fatty. I take it, I make Susan take it, my whole family takes it. This comes out of, believe it or not, dolphin research. The Navy maintains a fleet of dolphins, and a brilliant veterinarian recognized that these dolphins sometimes developed a syndrome identical to our Alzheimer's disease. Those dolphins were deficient in a particular fatty acid. She replaced the fatty acid, and they didn't get the Alzheimer's. Humans have the same issue, and we are more deficient in this particular fatty acid than ever before. And a simple replacement of this fatty acid called C15 will help us prevent these syndromes. It's published in a recent journal called Metabolites. It's a new nutritional C15, pentadecanoic acid, it's called. The deficiency that we are developing for C15 creates something called the cellular fragility syndrome. This is the first nutritional deficiency syndrome to be discovered in 75 years and may be affecting us in many ways, and as many as 1 in 3 of us. This is an important breakthrough. Take advantage of it. Go to fatty15.com/Dr. Drew to receive 15% off a 90-day starter kit subscription, or use code Dr. Drew at checkout for that 15% off, or just go to our website, drdrew.com/fatty15.
And that's just trouble in a relationship.
Sean, who are you? Like Dr. Drew all of a sudden?
Jack Posobiec on X. His last name is spelled Pobiec. Also Human Events on X. His book, Bulletproof, The Truth About the Assassination Attempts on Donald Trump, and Unhumans, The Secret History of Communist Revolutions and How to Crush Them, which Jack has been actively in pursuit of doing so. Appreciate you being here as always. There's so much to get into. I almost don't know where to start, but let's roll in slowly. Great tragedy. Colbert's been canceled. What are your thoughts?
Well, I've only just a few moments ago been able to clean myself up to process the heartache and the absolute emotional, visceral reaction that I had when hearing it. I like millions of Americans, we really just center our entire daily schedule around the Colbert Show. We watch it routinely, and then later after breakfast, lunch, and dinner, we'll discuss it with the family and unpack the various. I actually don't know anyone in real life. I don't think I've ever met anyone who had watched Colbert. I know people who watch Jon Stewart. I absolutely know. I'm like Gen Y, millennial generation, so tons of people watched Jon Stewart. And I'll even say that Stephen Colbert's original character I thought was really funny. The guy who was sort of like the fake Bill O'Reilly, the way he used to do it. But then when he went all in and he just came out as, sort of a very fungible, boring kind of character, I don't really understand why people would want to watch it. I don't understand what the comedy is. I don't understand what the humor is. I mean, you want to make fun of MAGA. There's plenty of ways to lampoon politics, but this is not it.
For sure. But what kills me is there's a weird denial going on amongst people that have come to his defense. And those of us in digital media are acutely aware of this. There's not a model that really works for late night anymore. They spend tens of millions of dollars every year. They're losing $40 million a year, and there's no way to recoup that. That's going to be bleeding that's going to continue because the model doesn't work. Unfortunately, you can't have a big theater. You can't have hundreds of employees. You can't pay tens of millions of dollars to your host. That's not a model that works because nobody's there to watch it. So why would they be doing advertising? Forget whether it's good or bad. Just forget good or bad. Say it's the greatest programming on earth. There's still nobody there.
No, there isn't. And if you remember that there was a point during the lockdowns during COVID where they created this sort of like late night super show where it was, I think it was Colbert, Kimmel, Fallon, and I think Jon Stewart called in a little bit. And Trevor Noah was part of this, and it was dead. It was completely dead. It was there was no content because they had no writers, by the way. So speaking extemporaneously, something that obviously you've been doing for decades at this point is not a skill that people can normally do. And so the idea that you can just sit back and turn on a microphone and put up a camera, like I started by live streaming. I started from live streaming on a phone like this and just started, kind of doing it. I worked in corporate media, as an intern, and then later worked in sales and worked in, like a CBS radio affiliate. And the idea that you can just do all of those things by yourself, it actually is really hard to do and to find things that people are interested in talking about. And the other one that's absolutely key and something that you obviously pioneered is being able to have that rapport with your audience. So that direct one-on-one interaction, being able to speak to commenters, being able to take call-ins. These guys never do any of that stuff. They never do any of that. No. So you take away the lights, you take away the production, and you're left with just a husk, just an absolute husk. And you wonder why none of them can do it. So Colbert, hey, guess what, man? It's a free country. I'll see you on Rumble. I'll see you on X. Have at it, man.
So you mentioned the rapport with the audience, and we see the Democratic representatives desperately seeking some way to manufacture authenticity in their Instagram posts and whatnot. Swalwell was doing stuff that was so cringy. I couldn't. I felt so bad for the guy. But I want to get your thoughts. I'm going to take this in a weird direction. first on Hunter Biden from the perspective that he was authentic. He was absolutely authentic. There was lots of issues with what he was saying.
I would listen to that
podcast. What I think was going. Yeah, but he was authentic and he was engaging, and I agreed with 80% of what he was saying.
Yeah,
and so I thought that was, and people missed that part. People have missed that piece. I wonder what your thoughts are on that.
No, I think that was authentic. That's what happened, because so many people know that, and it's not just Democrats, but it is a lot of Democrats, that particularly when you get into positions of power and you have people in these positions of power, that they're all wearing a mask of some sort, that you're never getting their real opinions. You're always getting some focus group tested. This is why Hillary failed so bad in 2016. You're always getting some focus group tested, kind of response, or, oh, this is what the metrics say that people want to hear. This is what the kids like these days. Kamala Harris did the same thing when, say, she found these pop artists and try to launder her campaign through them as if she could steal some of their popularity. And she found out that doesn't work in real life. Whereas Hunter Biden just comes out there, goes completely mask off. Obviously, we've through his own actions in the past, we've seen more of Hunter Biden than we see most anyone who lives in the public eye, more than any of us certainly were ever interested in seeing. And yet this was the first time you've seen the raw, unfiltered Hunter Biden when it comes to his beliefs and his ideals and his values and his thought processes. And you saw some of that with the laptop. I still have a copy of his laptop, by the way. It'd be interesting. By the way, and Hunter Biden, if you're there, I'd love for you to come on my show. We can go over it together. How fun would that be? Because this was a moment where he just absolutely started, spilling all of the tea, as the kids say, on what was really going on behind the scenes. And he said straight up, he said, yeah, my dad was on prescription medication during that debate. Of course he was. And I totally agree with him. He probably was. I believe that.
Well, let's break that piece down. So it's considered borderline malpractice to give 70-year-old plus Ambien because they fall and they get confusion, especially if they have other orthopedic or musculoskeletal or neurodegenerative disorders like Parkinsonism. Now it's not that doctors aren't at their liberty to do so if they think it's in the best interest of the patient. We can do whatever we want with the medication, but there are significant warnings against prescribing it to the elderly, which, let's say I prescribe it to somebody and they fall, I'd be in big trouble because everyone knows you shouldn't be doing that. You have to defend why you did it. Just giving it to somebody who's the president of the United States with Parkinsonism is bizarre. It makes me wonder what that osteopath was doing between Walter Reed and the president. Providing stuff like this maybe is why he was being carted around. Horrible judgment on his part. The other thing I've said from the beginning, we see the Parkinsonism, but we also see the cognitive changes in President Biden. It could have been medication. They never came clear on what it was. Well, here's one medication that might be having a role. And yet he had 2 weeks to prepare for the debates after coming home from overseas. It wasn't like he stepped off Air Force One onto the stage. He was at home. He was at Camp David practicing for 2 weeks. So the Ambien thing does not fly for me.
Wow. So you would even say that it may be something else completely.
Like cognitive decay. I mean,
full
due
on
to what?
Not even. Yeah. So the medication, right? So the medication, basically, it's like an old CIA trick, right? You admit to a lesser offense, so to cover you peel back one layer of the onion, so you don't have to get all the way to the core. No, yeah. Look, that being said, I would love to see this. You get like Hunter Biden, Anthony Weiner, Chris Cuomo. And I don't know, somebody from the right, well, I guess Blagojevich, even though he's on the left, but he's a Trump supporter. So you'd have to get somebody from the right on as well, maybe like a John Boehner, and you just get him up there and start telling the actual truth about what goes on in politics. Oh, yeah. I think that'd be the number one show on TV. Or online or anywhere. It would kill late night. They could even air it at late night and it would rate. So you're absolutely true. Absolutely correct. But yeah, I think in terms of the Ambien, remember when Biden wandered off when he was with the G7 leaders, or was it G12, whatever? Yeah. He was at that is more the Ambien looking kind of thing. I think that was probably what happened there. You add it to his other neurodegenerative disorders and you have somebody just kind of
just out of it, just wandering away. That makes perfect sense to me. What do you make of what is going on with the DNI, with Pam Bondi, with the Russiagate? I'm curious what your I'm sure you're talking all about it. I feel like it may go all the way up to Obama, but I don't believe they're going to go after him. Although Tulsi Gabbard sounds like she wants everybody.
I mean, I'll put it this way with my intelligence hat on. And I spent the entire weekend talking to people that are current and former intelligence officers, people who I served with, people who are currently serving, or people who like me got out and are doing things in the private sector now. And what's so interesting about this, and I heard some people say, oh, well, there's nothing really new here, but actually there is, right? Because now we have the actual underlying emails, we have the memos, we have the information that they pulled the president's daily briefing at one point. And those are the types of decisions that really can go all the way to the top, or have to come all the way from the top. So, by the way, just an explanation on the president's daily brief. The president's daily brief is kind of like, it doesn't only go to the president. So that's one thing that people have to understand about this. The president's daily brief is widely disseminated within the government at the highest levels. It goes to the National Security Council. It goes to the National Security Team in terms of Secretary of Defense. Secretary of the Treasury gets a copy. So all of the leading members working in national security of the administration, heads of the military, they're all getting read in on this at various levels. So the idea that you would not publish it one day or pull publishing. That's like saying that the New York Times, the publisher of the New York Times made the decision, there's going to be no New York Times today. Or the publisher of the Wall Street Journal, Murdoch comes in and says, there's going to be no Wall Street Journal today. It's just something that doesn't happen. Can they do it? Of course. Is it illegal? No, it's not illegal, but it's not done. So why would you do that? And I'm talking about this specific decision. Well, one of the other people who on that date, December 8th, 2016, go back, that's in the post-election but pre-inauguration period. So it's about a month after the election, about a month before the inauguration, month and a half. And so during that time frame, who else gets full access to the PDB? The incoming president, the president-elect. So that means not only would all the people of the Obama administration have been getting access to it, but Donald Trump and his team, which would have included at the time General Michael Flynn, people like Steve Bannon, so many others, Ryan Priebus coming in as the chief of staff, they all would have had access to this. And so it's my contention that one of the reasons that they pulled publishing of the entire product was so that this original assessment that the FBI thought that Russia did not interfere in our election would not be given to the Trump administration. Now, why do you do that? That's because, and they say in their comments here, they say throughout all of this, that this was done because we need to tie Trump to Russia so that this later hoax could be given legs, so that they could produce this completely faulty piece of information that said Russia did in fact interfere in the election. Now, so anyone, just take my partisan hat off for a second, but with anyone who worked in the intelligence services will tell you that that's not the way intelligence is supposed to work. Certainly not after 9/11, certainly not after Iraq WMDs or any of these horrific intelligence scandals have come to light. The way it's supposed to work is that you follow the facts and you follow the facts where they go. You don't start with an answer and then work backwards from there. But in this case, that's specifically what the highest levels of our government ordered. And I remember, by the way, serving at that time and having access to that ICA, even the classified version of it. And I remember not revealing anything here, but I remember reading it and going through and saying, this doesn't make any sense. I don't understand how Russia interfered in the election. With what they're presenting to me. Americans voted in the election. They looked at a preponderance of the information, and the Electoral College voted for Donald Trump in 2016. And it's just that cut and dry. So why is our intelligence community putting something together? Well, the reason being is that if you can claim Russia, a foreign actor, was involved, then you have the ability to use not just the FBI's in national security powers on your targets. Now you can use the entire intelligence community's broad swath of powers because, hey, you're fighting a foreign menace at this point. You're fighting a foreign intelligence operation rather than simply going after a domestic crime. That's why they were able to do this without warrants. This is why they were able to lie to the FISA court and on and on and on and on. And so what's really been done here, now the question, of course, what do I think will happen? look, what should happen is, doors should be getting kicked in right now over things like this. What will happen? Of course, that's going to come for the Department of Justice. But what I've been told is that, of course, Brennan and Comey do have active investigations into them right now.
And then Mike Benz points this out, that in addition to it being turned on the action of a foreign agent, then when Biden comes in, he starts declaring people the greatest risk, domestic terrorism. These are the greatest risks to the government, to the well-being of the people. And now all of a sudden, parents speaking up at a school board meeting are domestic terrorists, and therefore all that intelligence operation can be directed towards them. Is that going to come up in the course of this whole DNI investigation?
Well, that's something that we're going to have to see how it came to light from the people who were involved in, and this is where the DNI's broad powers do run up against a bit of a firewall, because when you look at anything that's DOJ related, that is typically law enforcement product. Obviously, there's so much overlap between intelligence and law enforcement, but if something has an active case pending against it, or like many of these people did, whether it be the domestic parents, being labeled extremists, traditional Catholics like myself, being, having people go after you and saying that you were, you were some kind of extremist because you prayed the rosary too much. This is just complete and utter insanity. And so what we do need to do is actually pull up, where were those people? Because we saw in many cases that a lot of the people, you would, I guess, to use Hollywood parlance, the below the line types, subdirectors and task force members, many of the people who worked on the Mueller campaign Mueller investigation later became the Jan 6 prosecutors, later were involved in many of these task forces, domestic violent extremism task forces under Merrick Garland. And so you saw that same type of aggressive prosecution and aggressive investigation that was previously only going after Trump, his campaign, his orbit, Tom Barak, by the way, who's currently our special envoy to Turkey and Syria, that now you're seeing that go against just the average person.
Shouldn't we know who those people are? Shouldn't we be able to call them out if anybody else is under their scrutiny or being affected by any of their investigations or legal action? Shouldn't we all know who that is?
Yes, absolutely, and emphatically. These are, and some people out there, Mike Benz, Julie Kelly, so many others have been working diligently to put names out. But there's always going to be information that doesn't quite come out because the FBI doesn't always put out the names of their analysts or the names of their special agents who work on these specific cases. And so that's why, when I have said things about, wanting more from the Department of Justice, the FBI, this is what we mean. Okay, this is what we're talking about. We don't want these blanket statements of, oh, everything's fine and we fixed everything because we've got some good people in at the top. And we do have good people in at the top for sure. But the question is, how many of these people, the ones that I've just described, are now just sitting around, and in many cases in the heads of field offices, which, by the way, Pam Bondi, one of her original acts early on with Kash Patel was to fire the head of almost every single field office of the FBI early on. Because the issue here, Drew, is that for 15 years under Obama and then again under Biden, and a lot of it festered, unfortunately, in the first Trump administration, so really almost 20 years at this point, that the entire intelligence community and FBI was set up in such a way where your politics, if they were to the far left, if you were someone who was a Hillary supporter, if you were someone who was in with Loretta Lynch and James Comey and all these types, well, guess what? Your career got put on the fast track. So it wasn't necessarily so much that they forced you to, quote unquote, be woke or be liberal or something like that. It's just that people understood, like any corporate culture, know that if you say the right things and if you have the right beliefs and if you have the right values, you will gain benefit, you will be able to advance, you will be able to get closer to Washington, D.C., which is, of course, where everyone wants to go, and your career will be put on the fast track. That's exactly what I saw when I was in the intelligence community, and that's exactly what's been going on here. So you're going to need some real real exfoliating and just absolutely down to the bones reworking. And what I'm seeing the DNI do is fantastic, because you take a look at what she's done. She's cracking open the intelligence community. And if you understand, looking at it through the lens that I know from my own background, when you look at it through that, she's cracking open this thing to its core, because I would say that we need, at a very minimum, not only the firing, but prosecution of anyone who's been involved in all this, but also a complete reworking of the intelligence community as we know it.
And sustained. It's going to have to be sustained for quite some time. My last question is to kind of circle back to the media, and it's the same thing I asked Lee Smith, and I'm just curious about this. If I were running CNN, I would look at all these documents and go, oh my God, we were unwitting dupes, or we were a true believer based on false information we're being fed. Let's be the first to get this story out. Let's investigate it every shift. Each of us take on what our role was and how we delivered this false information, how this could have happened to a well-established organization like CNN, and let's fall on our sword. Let's evaluate it. Let's call it out. Let's apologize. That would get ratings. Why are they not doing that? Are they just they're still true believers? It's impossible.
Well, I think it's also because of their audiences, right? So they were experiencing a bit of audience capture there.
There's no audience, Jack. There's nothing left. There's nothing left. They need an audience. That's the problem. They're going to have to fight for one. There's nothing left.
To be sure that it's not a big audience, but I think you've got a corrupt organization, MSNBC, CNN, and others, where they just can't let go. They just can't quit it, and they're chasing this narrative of, go look at a No Kings protest. That's the last people that are still watching Rachel Maddow at this point. You've got people and keep in mind, right, their entire careers were pegged to this thing. You'd have to torch your entire credibility. People want Pulitzers over this. I think the New York Times won a Pulitzer. CNN won awards over this. I was at a White House Correspondents Association dinner where they're all winning these awards for the Steele dossier. And I'm looking around going, what's going on here? What's happening in this room? And everyone's applauding and everyone's cheering. They would have to repudiate all of the entire journalistic profession if they were to come back on this. Because again, they've all been told that this is the way things go. But I tell you, the other part of it too is that if there's a linkage here, because their sources, their access, their own hooks into these agencies all run through the current leadership and these low-level people that are still in the FBI and DOJ and other parts of the intel community. That's their sources. That's Roger Stone has a CNN crew waiting down the street the night that he gets raided by the FBI. And when CNN was asked about it, they said they had a hunch. They said they had a hunch, Drew, that Roger Stone was about to be raided. I said, my gosh, you have an idea how much that cost to send an entire TV crew to just sit down some road in,
whoever that producer is should be on your psychic show.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I get that, man. Have that guy give me the lottery numbers, please. So no, we know that there's been this incestuous link between the two of them, and they don't want to break that. They don't want to let go.
What's coming up on your show? What's on your mind?
Look, we're digging in a lot into this Epstein situation, and it's been something where, I've been a part of it for, the last couple of months, and originally brought in by the DOJ and Attorney General with the original sort of quote unquote disclosure of files, which, turned out were already disclosed. And we've been pushing for more for quite some time. Now, this announcement that just broke this morning regarding a potential sit down with Ghislaine Maxwell, that's actually been something that I've been calling for a long time. Like, it might be my experience at Guantanamo Bay has always made me think that, look, you've got someone who's sitting behind bars with a treasure trove of information within her mind. Find a way to get it out of there. And no, that doesn't mean waterboarding. That means go and talk with her and see what can be done. So I think it's very clear that Ghislaine Maxwell right now is dangling potential information that she has out there to the Trump administration. And the Trump administration, I think rightly, is taking her up on this, but it's very risky. So it's very, very risky to see, okay, what does she have? Does she have actual names? Does she have any credible way to confirm these stories that she has, this testimony that she may or may not have? And if so, is she going to want a deal? So I think it's what's very clear to me, what's plain to me, is that she wants some kind of plea deal, some kind of credit for time served, or time off, the sentence, or even a full pardon.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, why wouldn't she go for that? I mean, that's if you were her or her attorney, that would be the what else are you going to get out of it except some commutation of your sentence? Well, Jack, again, we look forward to your show. We look forward to reading on Human and all your writings. I just appreciate you being there, fighting the good fight, and I deeply appreciate that you come on here and share your thoughts with us.
Drew, always a pleasure.
You got it. Jack Posobiec, everybody. Follow him. Let me give you the specifics. Obviously, go to his show and see him, but you can follow him on social media, Jack Posobiec on X and Human Events on X. Caleb, I'll get the show time. Help me with that, can you? Make sure we send our people to the Jack. I think it's coming up like very shortly.
Do you have anything to say about Ozzy?
Well, I got a lot to say. I'm going to say it in just a second. Caleb, can you help me on Jack's show? I want to make sure I get the referrals while I start to talk about these things. So, Ozzy. We're all, everybody appropriately is disturbed, heartbroken. We all feel attached to him. We all have our own memories. He has spanned multiple generations, both as a rock star and as a reality show star. And I know him. I know Jack better. And I know Ozzy kind of through Jack. Jack loved Ozzy. Jack, the thing about the Osbournes that I always have said is when you sit down with them and it's just you talking to them in a closed room. All four of them are some of the most substantial people you will ever meet. I don't know how else to describe them, but that they're just something about them. They're smart. They're great sense of humor. They have lots of talent. It's just, I remember the first time I met Ozzy, I'm like, oh my, of course, this guy's so substantial. But he had bad addiction. First time I met him, he told me he had amphetamine-induced Parkinsonism. And I thought, well, that fits. He was also on a ton of meds he shouldn't have been on. So we got him away from the medical system a little bit, as many celebrities with addiction get poorly served by my peers in the medical community. Ozzy was no exception to that. And he outlived his addiction. I mean, you don't live into your 50s typically when you have addiction. I mean, you're lucky if you get to 60. It's extraordinary when you get into your 70s, especially when you have something like Parkinson's going on. So I am delighted. There's a time to celebrate lives, and lives that are well-lived, substantial man, great contribution to our culture, open, big heart, real, true human being, that guy. Always told his truth, told of his stories, didn't hide anything. He was an open book. And he almost made it to 80. That is pretty damn good with the constellation of problems that he had. And so I think we should remember him fondly and celebrate his life and not be too heartbroken. It's our own stuff that we feel bad about because he was so much there through many of our lives. I want to talk a little more about President Trump's venous insufficiency. I described it in a post last week. I would say 100% of my patients over the age of 75 have edema from venous insufficiency at some point, either from prolonged standing or from having a very salty meal, or they just get to that point where they start having this problem. If you live into your 90s, you're going to have this problem. It is the result of gravity. We have a big vein down the middle of our leg, essentially, and it is normally broken up by valves that break up the column of blood. So the feet are not subjected to the gravity effects of a column of blood. As our muscles contract, the blood goes up and the valves hold it from going backwards. As we age, the veins expand a little bit and the valves stop working well, and the deep vein itself becomes a single column of blood under the influence of gravity. So what was at the feet a little bit of gravity and a couple of inches of venous blood, now we have 4 feet, or at least 3 feet of a column of blood, and all that fluid, the effects of gravity, extravasates into the feet, and they get a fusion of fluids. It is something we call edema, where you can put your finger into it and it pits. Now, that happens like everybody. What's that? Ew. Well, it happens to everybody. And medications make it worse, and standing makes it worse, and being obese makes it worse. President Trump needs to lose some weight. But people started running after me saying, it's vaccine. Why throughout a 40-year career do I see this in every 75 to 80-year-old? And now it's from a vaccine? No, I'm sorry. It's not from a vaccine. Now, Sasha Latipova put out a document or nice explanation of zeta factors is something that Christine Grace has been talking about that might have some effect from the vaccine that could contribute to the risk for this. I'm not seeing it earlier in elderly people. You would expect if there was an influenza vaccine or COVID, I would see more of it, or it would be worse, or it would be coming on more early in their people's lives. I'm not seeing it. I see it the way I've always seen it, in settings where I've always seen it, at about the rate I've always seen it. And President Trump is a setup for this kind of thing. He stands all day, excess weight, probably on a couple meds that cause, things like amlodipine, things like that really cause the leg edema to get worse. So it's nothing. It's a nothing. And people are, it's congestive heart failure. No, we had an echo. So are they lying about the echocardiogram? He had a 60% ejection fraction. He had a normal fluid dynamic in his heart. And by the way, everybody who, that's the bruising he had from being on aspirin. Everybody who said, we should see my arms from being on aspirin, by the way. Susan, can you attest to that? My bruising on my forearms?
Yeah, and everybody always complains about that vein on your neck, too.
Oh, yeah, that's an anatomic thing I've had my whole life. That's from weightlifting. I don't know what happened with that. And people go, his heart failure. You mentioned right atrial pressure's up. No, it's not. It's just anatomic abnormality that I have. But again, to have leg edema with clear lungs is not heart failure typically. So pay attention to that too. All right. So there's those two topics. And then we talked about Hunter a little bit. So I want to get into that in a little more detail. We will show you some video of him talking about his dad and the Ambien. I discussed the Ambien issue with Jack already. I don't want to get too into that except to say that a man his age with Parkinsonism should only be given Ambien under the most extraordinary circumstances, certainly not in the run-up to a debate. But I assure you he was not getting it. He may have gotten it, as I said, when he was overseas. We saw evidence of him sort of wandering away, addled, not knowing where he is. That Ambien could do that. But here's Humber talk about the Ambien. Let's take a look at this.
What happened in that debate? He flew around the world, basically, in the mileage that he could have flown around the world 3 times.
Yeah.
He's 81 years old. He's tired as shit. They give him Ambien to be able to sleep. He gets up on the stage, and he looks like he's a deer in the headlights. And it feeds into every fucking story that anybody wants to tell. And Jake Tapper, with literally how many anonymous sources. If this was a conspiracy, Andrew, you know this, somehow the entirety of a White House in which you literally living on top of each other has kept their mouth shut about, like what? And what's the conspiracy?
Yeah.
That Joe Biden got old? Yeah, he got old. He got old before our eyes.
Well, he's admitting to what everyone was seeing. There's aging, and then there are medical illnesses that come up in the aging process, like Parkinsonism, like cognitive decline. And God bless Hunter. He is so frank and honest. He's authentic. He's himself. But Caleb, go through that. Don't show me here on my screen, but go through that video for a little bit and look for one of those. If you get a direct shot of him and his face, because I want to show you something when he's looking at the interviewer, particularly when he was talking about going down to El Salvador and invading El Salvador to bring back the prisoners down there, which is kind of interesting. By the way, the president of El Salvador responded to that and said, those are mine. So sorry, we were helping you with that.
I don't know what he is.
Freeze it on his face when he looks at freeze it at some point when he's looking at the interviewer. It's coming up here. It's coming up. He's talking about George Clooney. Everything he's saying is accurate, which again, let's hats off to Hunter Biden for being truthful, authentic, accurate. There, let's look at that. Now, can you zero in on his face a little bit? Can you get a little closer? It's because you're going to see something that worries me. First of all, he seems something's up. He seems a little agitated, and maybe he's just angry and tired himself, but okay. Can you get to his eyes? It's not, you can't see it there because he's squinting. But in many of it's definitely not there in this picture, but in some of the pictures, you will see that his eyelids are higher than they should be, where you can see the white between his iris, the colored part of his eye, and the lid itself. That is not something that's kind of it right there on the right eye. That's not physiological. That's hard to do. Only a few conditions create that. Hyperthyroidism, mania, extreme anger and rage can too, and then stimulants. So I worry. This man has had severe addictive disease, severe, massive consequences, probably sex addiction in addition to stimulant addiction. And do we see any evidence that he's had treatment? No. He says he's not touched drugs or alcohol since 2019. God, I hope that's true, because if not, his life is really in danger. Because if he goes back to substances, it's not like he's going to slowly ramp up or be able to control it for a long time. He's going to go right back to where he was pretty quickly, like within months or so. And that place is a very dangerous spot. Things like intracranial bleeds, cardiac events, those things become really possibilities. So I worry about him. When you hear interviews with his former business partner, I forget the guy's name, it starts with like a B. I'll think of it in a second. But he talked about what a great guy he was, what a bright guy he was, and I'm sure he is, but he's got a bad illness here. And if that's not being properly treated, or if he's still smoking weed, this is not going to go well. This is going to be really, really serious. But in the meantime, he has been authentic, and he's been speaking things that I think a lot of us would agree about, which is fascinating. His dismissing of his dad is, I would say, you may believe it, but it's the most disingenuous part. I mean, yes, he got old. Yes, he's 81 years old. Yes, it happened in front of us. But he's the president of the United States. And what you're effectively saying, I mean, he as much as said it, he got so old he was not able to do the job of the president, and just moving around the world and being given these medications that he should not have been given tipped him into a state that who was then in charge, which is what we've all been asking. So Hunter, in a weird way, is telling us what we all thought. He's not using the same language. He's not reporting what Jake Tapper reported, but he's telling us the same thing. And so, okay, thank you, Hunter, for telling us that, but we'd like to know who then was in charge when he got old, let's say. Use any euphemistic language you want. All right, and by the way, I'll repeat what I said about the Ambien. He was definitely not getting Ambien in the roll-up to the debate. He had 2 weeks at Camp David preparing for the debate. He's president of the United States. I want to know that 2 weeks is enough to get him stable to making good decisions and be able to express himself. If not, there's a problem. There's a major, major problem. And who was making the decisions, and if not him? We still have, I don't think he talked about, did he talk about the Autopen, Caleb, do you know, during the...
I didn't watch it.
I think he did. I think he talked about how there was policies and procedures. I did a little bit, but it was a 3-hour interview, and that's something that people...
Did he talk about it being pardoned?
I don't think he talked about his pardon. I don't think so. The interview was terrible. The interviewer himself was really just horrible. Got hard, not... What?
Andrew is one of my favorite journalists from my generation, so I will not stand for insults against Andrew.
Well, okay. Well, what I thought, let me qualify. He got a lot out of him, and he worked for 3 hours on him, and he said a lot in that time. But his follow-up questions were nil. This is the thing, and this is what bothers me and why I said horrible. And I will take it back. I don't mean that he was horrible through and through. I mean, it's horrible that journalists don't ask follow-up questions anymore. It's just the craziest thing to me. They're just not thinking while they're not listening while the interview is going on. They're sort of loading up their next question. And his questions were good, and they were courageous, and I'll give him that. And he got a lot out of him. So good for him.
Maybe starstruck.
Anything you saw, Caleb, that you...
No, so I didn't actually, I didn't get to finish the whole interview. I saw a bunch of the clips and the bits and pieces, and I was shocked that this is the first time in my whole life that I've found Hunter Biden to be like appealing. I found him to be, wow, this guy's honest. He's telling the truth. Why wasn't this guy out there telling the truth during the election? Biden would have gotten a lot more votes if they were just being truthful.
Well, yes, maybe. But it's why I like working with addicts. They're usually very authentic. They're smart. They're rich human beings. Ozzy, I just talked about Ozzy. Ozzy was a bad drug addict, great guy. And so the addiction brings them to terrible places. But as you're seeing, he's an authentic person, and we relate to that, especially these days with all the bullshit we are exposed to. All right, let's talk about what's coming up. We've got tomorrow a very interesting show. Benny Johnson's coming back, and Mama June with Pumpkin. I haven't seen Mama June in probably 15 years. Kelly Victor's going to join us with Kate Shanahan and Stephanie Van Watson on Thursday. Kennedy in here with Sage Steele coming in to actually in studio with me. That's interesting. Dr. Michael Goodwin in August. Emily Barsh is killing it. Just great guests all the way up and down. So please do stay with us. Look for us. We are here generally Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday Pacific time at 2. And we appreciate you. Let me look at what you're all saying on the rant. Susan, anything?
One thing you didn't mention was he threw a lot of F-bombs.
Yeah, but you know what? When people are doing drugs, the addicts talk like that.
That's what your daddy said. He just said, "No, Dr. Drew, addicts are not cool because they cuss."
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, you're not censored, your daddy. We know you're here.
But let's remind ourselves. I mean, go watch Swalwell's video where he uses the F word every third sentence, and it is so much more cringeworthy than listening to Hunter Barton. Hunter Barton just looks agitated when he uses the F word, and it feels like it's coming at you a little bit. And that, I think, is not normal. I think I worry about that. I don't know him. I've never treated him.
Drugs again.
Don't know anybody's treated him. But whenever anybody with severe addiction changes, or where you go, what was that? It's always back on it. Always.
It's just cocaine. I mean, come on.
Oh, man.
Do you think
he'd say anything more about that?
I mean, go ahead.
Well, go ahead, Susan.
Drew,
what
do you think he did that interview without getting...
We're about to learn something.
Tell me, Susan.
No, I mean, his dad was taking Ambien when he went to do a debate. Why can't he do cocaine while he's getting an interview? I mean, it runs in the family.
Exactly, Caleb. So go ahead.
No, do you think that he just went on and just did this on his own?
Hold on.
Oh.
Wait. Before we do that, I got to remind everybody, we're at 1 p.m. tomorrow with Benny Johnson. Emily Barsh pointed that out. I've screwed that up. 1 p.m. tomorrow Pacific. But go ahead, Caleb. I'm sorry.
No, do you think that Hunter did this interview just on his own, or do you think that he actually got like the family office's approval, or do you think they ever would have approved him going on a channel like this? Because it's YouTube based.
Yeah. My bet is he's been unleashed a bit. Like there was probably gigantic infrastructure around him, not letting him do anything. And that's why you didn't see anything from him. There was whoever was running this thing, whoever we keep asking that question, were the same people that were silencing him. And you could imagine if you're, part of a campaign and you've got a drug addict running around and you don't know if he's sober or not, what he might say. I get it. I understand that. But my bet is he is smart enough to know that these YouTube interviews have huge reach, and he wanted to be his real self in his present condition. He had something to say, and he said it. Good for him. I have so many mixed feelings about Hunter. I mean, on one hand, I admire his authenticity and agree with a lot of stuff he said. I worry like hell that something's going to go really bad here, and I was offended by some of the stuff he said at the same time. I didn't like some of it, but that was only about 20% of it. And if he's not on drugs, that's interesting in and of itself, even. I would hate to see him when he is on drugs, is sort of that kind of feeling. But sometimes you look at people and go, I hope they're on drugs. But that stare phenomenon is pretty telling, if indeed that's what I'm seeing. And the agitation and the interrupting and the impulsivity, and it was all kind of there. But I don't know. It could easily be just him. All right, 1 o'clock tomorrow. That's when we'll see you right here. We'll see you then. Ask Dr. Drew is produced by Caleb Nation and Susan Pinsky. As a reminder, the discussions here are not a substitute for medical care, diagnosis, or treatment. This show is intended for educational and informational purposes only. I am a licensed physician, but I am not a replacement for your personal doctor, and I am not practicing medicine here. Always remember that our understanding of medicine and science is constantly evolving. Though my opinion is based on the information that is available to me today, some of the contents of this show could be outdated in the future. Be sure to check with trusted resources in case any of the information has been updated since this was published. If you or someone you know is in immediate danger, don't call me, call 911. If you're feeling hopeless or suicidal, call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 800-273-8255. You can find more of my recommended organizations and helpful resources at drdrew.com/help.